Good morning, everybody.
Hare Krishna. That's crowded. So today we'll be reading from the glorious Srimad Bhagavatam, Spotless Purana, fifth canto. We'll be concerning the first chapter, and covering text 22 today. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskritya Narang Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayat Nashta Preshwa Bhadrishu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyutam Shoke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Okay, so it appears today's verse is in prose, so I'll just say it and then we'll do the word for word. So, Manorapi Parinaivam Pratisandhita Manoratha Surashi Branu Matinatmajam Akhila Dhara Mandala Sthiti Guptaya Asthapya Swayam Mati Vishama Vishaya Jalashaya Shaya Upararama. Okay, synonyms. Manu Swayambhuva Manu Api also Parena by Lord Brahma Evam thus Pratisandhita executed Manahrata his mental aspiration Sura Rishivara of the great sage Narada Anumatana by the permission Atmajam his son Akhila of the entire universe Dhara Mandala of planets Sthiti maintenance Guptaye for the protection Asthapya establishing Swayam personally Ativishama very dangerous Vishaya material affairs Visha of poison Jala Ashaya ocean Ashaya from desires Upararama got relief. Okay, translation. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Swayambhuva Manu, with the assistance of Lord Brahma, thus fulfilled his desires. With the permission of the great sage Narada, he delivered to his son the governmental responsibility for maintaining and protecting all the planets of the universe. He thus achieved relief from the most dangerous, poisonous ocean of material desires. Please repeat after me. Swayambhuva Manu, with the assistance of Lord Brahma, thus fulfilled his desires. With the permission of the great sage Narada, he delivered to his son the governmental responsibility for maintaining and protecting all the planets of the universe. He thus achieved relief from the most dangerous,
He thus achieved relief from the most dangerous,
poisonous ocean of material desires.
poisonous ocean of material desire.
Purport. Swayambhuva Manu was practically hopeless because such a great personality as Narada was instructing his son Priyavrata not to accept household life. Now he was very pleased that Lord Brahma had interfered by introducing his son to accept by inducing his son to accept the responsibility for ruling the government of the universe. From Bhagavad Gita, we get information that Vaivaswata Manu was the son of the sun god, and that his son Maharaja Ikshwaku ruled this planet Earth. Swayambhuva Manu, however, appears to have been in charge of the entire universe, and he entrusted to his son Maharaja Priyavrata the responsibility for maintaining and protecting all the planetary systems. Tara Mandala means planet. This earth, for instance, is called Tara Mandala. Akhila, however, means all or universal. It is therefore difficult to understand where Maharaja Priyavrata was situated, but from this literature, his position certainly appears greater than that of Vaivaswata Manu, for he was entrusted with all the planetary systems of the entire universe. Another significant statement is that Swayambhuva Manu took great satisfaction from abnegating the responsibility for ruling all the planetary systems of the universe. At present, politicians are very eager to take charge of the government, and they engage their men in canvassing from door to door to get votes to win the post of president and or a similar exalted office. On the contrary, however, herein we find that King Priyavrata had to be persuaded by Lord Brahma to accept the post of emperor of the entire universe. Similarly, his father, Swayambhuva Manu, felt relieved to entrust the universal government to Priyavrata. Thus, it is evident that the kings and executive heads of government in the Vedic age never accepted the position for sense enjoyment. Such exalted kings, who were known as Rajarishis, ruled only to maintain and protect the kingdom for the welfare of the citizens. The history of Priyavrata and Swayambhuva Manu describes how exemplary, responsible monarchs performed the duties of government with disinterest, keeping themselves always aloof from the contamination of material attachment. Material affairs have therein been compared to an ocean of poison. They had been described in a similar way by Srila Narottama Dasa Thakura in one of his songs, Sanshar Vishanole Deva Nishihiya Jwale Judaite Na Kainu Upai. My heart is always burning in the fire of material existence. I have made no provisions for getting out of it. Kolokir Prema Dhana Harinam Sankirtan Rati Na Janmila Kene Tai. The only remedy is Harinama Sankirtana, the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, which is imported from the spiritual world, Goloka Vrindavana. How unfortunate I am that I have no attraction for this. Manu wanted to seek shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord, and therefore, when his son Priyavrata took charge of his worldly affairs, Manu was very relieved. That is a system of Vedic civilization. At the end of life, one must free himself from worldly affairs and completely engage in the service of the Lord. The word Surarshi Vara Anumatana is also significant. Manu entrusted the government to his son with the permission of the great sage Narada. This is particularly mentioned because although Narada wanted Priyavrata to become free from all material affairs, when Priyavrata took charge of the universe by the request of Lord Brahma and Manu, Narada was also very pleased. Ajnanatamrandhasya gnanjana shlakaya chakshu umnitamyena tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakada Mayam Dadati Swapirantikam. Hare Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopisha Gopka Kanta Kanta Namoste Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutadevi Pranamami Hari Pre Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so today's verse once more. Swayam Bhuva Manu, with the assistance of Lord Brahma, thus fulfilled his desires. With the permission of the great sage Narada, he delivered to his son the governmental responsibility for maintaining and protecting all the planets of the universe. He thus achieved relief from the most dangerous, poisonous ocean of material desires. Okay. Okay, so one of the very first things that we see within, especially the purport, is that originally rarely found anymore, is that rulers did not rule for the purpose of sense gratification. They did it for the best interest of others. So, in a similar way, we should take up roles in our lives with that type of thing in mind. So, traditionally, in Vedic times, a ruler did so as like a protection on God's behalf, in a sense. He was to protect the citizens, and he was in charge of so much with the goal in mind to make sure that everyone had what was properly needed for them and the proper protection so that they may live a spiritual life. Because if one is lacking food, one is in danger, so many other things, one's around too much sense gratification or things that would allure to that, spiritual progress in a society is very hard to come by. And so a ruler was set to make sure everyone had an opportunity to live in a peaceful way, that they can grow spiritually, because this is the whole point of life. So we should take up that same mood, because more often than not, we're going to end up taking on some type of role, whether it's one that we desired, one that we don't really want to do, or one that we're neutral to. But regardless, we should try to do it as a service to Krishna and others, but never our senses, even if it was something that we did desire to do. Because, sometimes we naturally have a desire, even if it starts out with sense gratification, or we just have a desire because we know our propensity is that we could do good in that type of role, in that position. Like, maybe you're a really good speaker and you know a decent amount of Shastra, and you really have deep faith in your Krishna consciousness. So maybe you feel more apt to be a preacher and go to do preaching activities. So in that way, you'd be engaging that desire, but not for sense gratification of, look at me, I'm a big hot shot, I'm a pandit, I'm very learned. So one of the duties of ruler, as I have mentioned, is to make sure that people have a favorable situation in which to learn and perform devotional service. So we should act in such a way that we may also teach this knowledge to others, or help them in a favorable way that may benefit, even if it's just prasadam or the holy name. We're going to end up taking on different positions, be in different situations. And we should do it in such a way that we're able to do it in a devotional manner. Even if it seems somewhat mundane, even if it's I'm working at like Target or something, you just being a great person that you are, that itself does a lot. People hear the holy name, maybe you're chanting at work, that does a lot. You take that money that you make and you donate to the temple or to a devotee that's preaching, book distribution. You find out a way in which to purify what you're doing and turn it into devotional service. As Krishna says towards the end of the Bhagavad Gita in chapter 18, verses 68 and 69, for one who explains the supreme secret to the devotees, pure devotional service is guaranteed. And at the end, he will come back to me. There is no servant in this world more dear to me than he, nor will there ever be one more dear. So we should carry out all the things we do, all our duties, all our actions, our words to the amount that we can. Krishna will carry what we lack, but we have to put in the effort. And when we do that, we're helping spread this preaching movement, which is one of the major goals of both Mahaprabhu and Prabhupada. And it's what's pleasing to Krishna ultimately, is that we spread this movement. So we should act in a conducive way to this goal and try not to get lured by sense gratification, especially as we take on different roles or get put in different situations that we may have to deal with material things or people. Even if you're living at the temple, sometimes depending on what position you got, you may have to go to like car mechanic to get the temple van fixed, or you may end up preaching to a bunch of material people, or so many other circumstances. So regardless if you live at the temple or out of the temple, you may be in a position that you have to associate or do what's seemingly material things. So it's not that the material no, I don't want to go there yet. Material affairs, as mentioned in this purport, talking about Nautam Das Thakur, is that material affairs are an ocean of poison. And we see that for most people, material affairs of any sort, even if it's a little bit, tends to be poisonous because people get addicted to it. That's the main thing they end up doing, even if it's something that's pretty much harmless, like watching TV, for instance. It's not really affecting anybody necessarily, but you're sitting there, you're putting in all this information and all this nonsense in your head, and now you're meditating on it, and maybe you neglect some of your duties to binge watch a show, or in general, now your mind's just filled with that type of consciousness, and it affects how you interact with other people or how you go about your devotional service. But it's not to say that these different items in the material world are bad within themselves. For instance, we say no alcohol, right? It's not that alcohol in itself is bad, but when you drink it, it's bad. But alcohol is oftentimes used to heal wounds, or like the famous example that Prabhupada gives is with the knife, or like a steel blade. In the hands of a thief, that's a very dangerous situation. He's going to try to take a life. But in the hands of a doctor, that same type of material, a blade, is used to help heal somebody. So it's not so much about the object itself as the consciousness we have when we interact with it. So Manu, being the king that he was relieved when his son took charge of the kingdom, because now he could renounce his material association and fully dedicate himself to devotional service. So we can imagine just how stressful ruling the whole entire universe must really be, and how taxing that must be. So the whole time, Swambhuva Manu is thinking, when will I get an opportunity to like get out of this, so like, you know, I'm not fully absorbed in thoughts of all this and anxiety, so I could like fully dedicate myself in the way that I think would be best. So just as he wanted to dedicate himself fully in our day-to-day lives, regardless of where we find ourselves, we should try to dedicate ourselves in full to Krishna and to devotional service. Doesn't matter where we find ourselves, but the main thing is that we do everything in a consciousness of serving Krishna and to please him. So Narada Muni wanted Maharaj Priyavrata to become free from all material affairs. However, we see that when Priyavrata took charge of the universe by the request of Lord Brahma and Manu, Narada was also very pleased. And you know, you might think this is like contrary, because here Narada, he's like famous for trying to make people sannyasis. I mean, we saw how he was with what am I blanking on his name? Daksha and his children. You know, he just made all his kids sannyasis, and you know, from doing that sort of thing too many times, he got cursed for it. But we see in this situation that, you know, he was actually pleased by Priyavrata not taking up that, because he was following Lord Brahma and Manu. So similarly, we may end up taking on a position or situation that's contrary to how we may have planned our lives to be, or contrary to what others have planned for you. Maybe that's getting married for some, renouncing for others, taking on a management type of position at a temple, or among many other things. However, when the goal is to serve Krishna and others, then we should try to execute those happily, especially if things come in a divine way. So, you know, we're going to end up in some type of situation where we may not fully know what that situation truly is. Very few truly know for certain what their situation is going to be like. I mean, about one of the only examples we really see is Maharaj Pariksha. He knew he was going to die in 7 days. For us, we don't quite know what's going to happen to us. Krishna may decide us to leave this body and go somewhere else, or go back home, or he may decide that we get married or that we renounce. Main thing is that or we may end up taking a high position such as management, being in some type of ministry type of situation. Whatever the case is, we should try to accept that with a happy attitude, because Krishna is putting us in this situation. As long as it's obviously conducive to your relationship with Krishna. You know, sometimes we may try to put ourselves in a situation in which we thought was going to be favorable, but it turns out it's actually not favorable for us. And that could often be the case, because oftentimes we act whimsically. We think, you know, I'm pretty sure this is what I'll do best at. And sometimes we may be right. But other times, you know, oftentimes we don't fully know ourselves or our propensities, or where our struggles truly lie, until we're put in that situation that oftentimes we put ourselves in. But when this comes divinely, when it's divinely arranged, when it just happens to come to you and it's helpful to your devotional service, then you should definitely do it in a mood of joy that you've been gifted this service. We chant Hare Krishna to ask for devotional service and to ask to serve Krishna in a way which pleases him. Shouldn't have the attitude that we're chanting to please ourselves out of it. So Priyavrata doesn't just do this whimsically. He doesn't whimsically decide that he wants to rule and have such power. Many people, like Prabhupada was mentioning, in the purport, many politicians and such, they're oftentimes wanting to keep their position and wanting to have that power, which isn't anything new. We see this throughout the ages, throughout many different cultures, throughout all kinds of countries and civilizations. But Priyavrata instead takes this instruction for Lord Brahma. Now, Lord Brahma, he is a great authority with the greatest good for living entities and their eternal relationship with Krishna in mind. Mind you, both Lord Brahma and Swayambhuva Manu are two of the 12 Mahajanas. Narada also. But Narada was in agreement once Brahma, who was his father and his spiritual master, said this is what should be done. So, Lord Brahma, he has the greatest good for living entities and their eternal relationship with Krishna in mind when he is coming to do something like this. So we should also seek out a devotee of the Lord who has a similar quality of mind, with whom we may take their instruction and follow in that way. Because this is honestly where our empowerment truly comes from and can be found, and knowledge is revealed in this way. As mentioned in the Shvetashvatara Upanishad 6:23, Yasya deve para bhaktir yatha deve tatha gurao tasyate katita hyartha prakashante mahatmanaha. Only unto those great souls who have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master are the imports of Vedic knowledge automatically revealed. So our guru is this external representation of our Paramatma, or our guru, guru principle. This is our, for lack of better words, our direct interaction with Krishna. Because most of the time we're not at a level where Krishna's coming in our dreams and speaking to us, or we're just casually carrying out conversations with the deities or pictures. Most of us aren't at that level, at least not yet. So our guru is that principle for us. He knows this knowledge and he can help instruct us and tell us how to integrate this into our lives in a way that is going to be best suited for us to make rapid spiritual growth. So oftentimes in this current age, we're born in a situation that we don't really know what is to be done or what is not to be done. No, we hear so many things growing up and observe so many things that give us our own concoction of what should or shouldn't be done. And this also goes for if you're growing up in a devotional family. We're not perfect. So sometimes we see things that shouldn't be done. Maybe for us that grew up as a Karmi in a Karmi family, that's saying things like drinking, eating meat, just breaking the regular principles. But in general, for any type of family, whether a Karmi or a devotee family, maybe we see that the parents or the parent-child, or parents and their family or whatever, they yell at each other, they don't treat each other with respect. And this is what we're growing up with, and we see, we observe, and oftentimes that affects us in one way or another. We either end up taking it out and act in a similar way, or we're avoidant of things because of these situations we grew up around. So we end up concocting an idea of how we should be and what we should be doing just throughout our lives. Not even necessarily taking instruction from anybody, but just from observing and overhearing other people, we start concocting, this is what's right in life, this is what's wrong in life, this is what I should do, this is what I shouldn't do, this is what will make me happy, this is what won't make me happy. Well, it's all a concoction that we come up with in our head. So this is a very dangerous position that we've been in for so many lifetimes. We're always trying to find out how to live our life to the fullest. YOLO, you only live once. We try life after life. This is what I think I should be doing. This is how I think I should live my life. This is how I'm going to be happiest. And because we keep doing that and acting whimsically, thinking this, thinking that, whether true or not true, we end up birth after birth going through the same problem over and over. And this is actually the definition of insanity. You're doing the same exact thing over and over, expecting a different result each time. So we we accept those things that please us and reject those things that displease us, but it doesn't make it conducive or to our true happiness and fulfillment. So, oftentimes that's kind of a sign of a living entity, is that we're pleasure seekers, because the soul itself experiences pleasure, experiences bliss, and when we're not in that state, we want that state because that's a natural position, Satchidananda. So we want to feel that happiness, and so we seek in whatever way we can and try to reject those things that we think won't be good for that. So, even if that means that, taking drugs is that means of where I think I find my happiness, or I rob people so I have a lot of money to find my happiness, or, that's more severe type of examples, or, I avoid hanging out with good association because I think I'll be bored and all that, because I think, it's not going to give me my happiness. So we're constantly doing this, trying to find what will give us a true happiness or fulfillment in life. And these are two very important things for most people, and without it, many feel lost. Everybody's trying to seek happiness. That's natural. As I said, that's part of the soul. We want this happiness. But we also want to feel a sense of fulfillment. We want to feel a sense of purpose. And oftentimes in this day and age, most of us don't know what our purpose is. How many times, even over the decades, more and more often than not, we see that when kids grow up, they don't know what they want to do in life. A lot of people don't want to they don't want to sell their life to working a 9 to 5 all the time, and save up for one day to be able to retire in their 60s and not be able to fully enjoy their money because they're old and their health isn't as good, and they're spending all that money on doctor appointments. Or you got other people that, they don't want to do backbreaking work because they just want to have the money so that they could go do what they want. But people are seeking this idea of fulfillment. What is my purpose? Even whether they're thinking that in a material way or in a spiritual way, they're trying to think, what is my purpose? What is it that I'm supposed to do that I'll feel the happiest and I'll do the best at? So, however, without truly understanding ourselves and what we are, we'll never truly find that. If like the common story that we hear about the fish, if like a fish thinks that living on the land and, getting married to a woman here on the land and having a nice comfy bed and all that, he thinks this is going to be his happiness. He's wrong, because, fish needs air. If they don't do so well, they with other things within the land, you got birds trying to peck at them, you got humans trying to gut them, you got it's danger at every step. But when the fish enters back in the water, he could breathe, and air is our life. We need some type of form of breathing, and for fish, it's water. So when it's out of the water, it's not in its normal position, and so it feels discomfort constantly. So similarly, when we don't know who we are, we'll experience that. Even in a material sense, if we don't have an idea of what we are, if I don't have a sense of who I am and what I like, and I try gluing myself and adding myself to this group or that group, or I change my appearance or that to fit into this idea or that idea, there's still this sense of emptiness because we don't know who we are. Even more true when it comes to spirituality, because you're never going to be fully satisfied trying to identify with this body and identify with this group or that group. You may find some type of happiness there, but you're still going to have this sense of emptiness that won't go away. And it's because you're a spirit soul, you're a spiritual being, and your purpose is to live in a spiritual way. And what is that spiritual way? That's to act in a spiritual way. It's not just, just meditate and do nothing forever. Because, we're active beings. We're energy, there's that constant new age term. Everything's energy. Energy generally implies that there's movement to that energy. So the soul, being an energy of God, also it interacts, it moves, it does things. So we'll never be satisfied trying to negate everything. It's only going to come when we realize that there's a God, he has a form, and we are separate from him that have a form, and one and different, and we have a relationship to him, just like a father and son, or whatever type of relationship that we have. It's with him. That's our origin, and our origin has a relationship and a way of interacting in that relationship. So we should find someone that could help us to understand these things. So when we find a bona fide spiritual master or devotee, they can help us understand these things and to guide us. As the common verse of the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita goes, just try to learn the truth by approaching the spiritual master, inquire from him submissively, and render service unto him. So for thy soul can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. So, they've already walked that road. They've been there, done that. And oftentimes, not all the time, but especially here for people from the US or such, even in India, but mostly we'll find it in the US. A lot of spiritual people in the movement once had an interesting background. Maybe they were hippies, or maybe they were even as far as like being like ex-gang members or so forth. Everyone has a different type of background, but all of them have came past that. They've experienced both sides of life. They've experienced the material, sometimes very super material, mundane enjoyment, and they've experienced spiritual enjoyment. So oftentimes when we find people like that, they've been there, done that, and they can attest to what their experience was like and how we may overcome it. Maybe sometimes we find that they've been through something similar. It's hard to really interact with someone and ask someone who hasn't necessarily gone through what you've gone through. But nonetheless, spiritual master, they have the knowledge in which could really pierce the heart and really help reveal this to you. So in this way, no matter what roles or situations we find ourselves in, we'll be able to carry them out with better intention and purify ourselves. But most importantly, we please Krishna and be of help to the mission of helping others become Krishna conscious, whether that's directly through your words, helped by your actions, or seen through your example. Everything that we do as devotees is a source of devotion. That's something very unique to Bhakti Yoga. It's not that I just go to a spiritual place of worship once a week or even like a couple times a week, but the rest of the day I'm just doing nonsense. It's everything you're doing. You're trying to figure out can I serve Krishna more and more? How can I not waste this moment? Krishna says, time I am. So how can we not waste Krishna and use that time that we're gifted within this body to serve him in a way that pleases him most? And he's often pleased that we give him to other people. And the only remedy, as mentioned by Narottam Das Thakur in this purport, is the Harinam Sankirtan movement. The chanting of Hare Krishna Mahamantra, which is imported from the spiritual world, the Loka Vrindavan. However, he finds himself without attraction in this. So this is our means of coming out of this illusion. And also one of the means of which we can help other people is to induce them to at least hear the holy names. Better if we could get them to chant, and especially chant in group, in Sankirtan with other people. Because this is our life, this is our soul, this Sankirtan movement, through distributing books, through chanting, through distributing prasadam, through so many things. It's all an act of devotion. You know, how many times, how unique is it that we find a way to make food spiritual and potent to purify others? How often is that we just simply saying a name, you know, simply saying a name, spiritual name nonetheless, but a name, you know, in a material way, that doesn't do anything, but in a spiritual way, Lord's name, or even oftentimes the name of a devotee of the Lord has a tremendous effect. How many times is it that simply sweeping the floor can purify somebody like that? Everything that is done in Bhakti Yoga is a way of service to Krishna and a way of purification of ourselves as well as others. It is something very unique that you don't really find much else places. We find elements of it, you know, hearing, chanting, remembering, but to the extent of making your full entire life, your full entire activities, your thoughts, your actions, even your food, your hygiene, the way you have your room set up, how you interact with people, so many things we're doing in a way of devotion, in a way that pleases Krishna. And even if we're not preaching directly, just having that action, just people seeing how we interact and how we go about things is a source of inspiration. I mean, for example, when we have great saints come through here, like Parmeshwar Prabhu, oftentimes we feel a sense of inspiration because it's not even necessarily anything that they're saying directly to us, but just how they carry themselves out. You know, we see that he's constantly reading, constantly chanting, going and doing book distribution, even if it's living in a van in like -degree weather, eating very simply. It's a source of inspiration just by his example, let alone the words that he speaks, the knowledge he has accumulated through his devotional service. So all in all, coming back to the original theme of today's class and today's text and purport, is that we're going to take on roles in life. That could be in so many different types of ways, whether that's temple, outside of temple. You're going to take on some type of role, even if it's just, you know, helping a devotee out at the temple, maybe like a new bhakta, or, you know, you're married and you have a wife and a child, or husband and a child, and serving in that way, taking on that role, or just being friends, for example. That's a role in which we shouldn't take lightly, because, you know, if I just take that friendship in order to make myself materially pleased and yourself material pleased, then this relationship is of no, it's not really doing anything beneficial for either of us. But if there's at least a sense of being able to do something, even on the slightest bit, you know, feeding your friend prasadam, or sometimes consoling him, or being that exemplary person for him in his life, you know, just having that association with you, you know, you're trying to do your best as a devotee and he's seeing that and he's impressed by that or inspired by that, or he's wondering, you know, what is this? Like, you gave up everything to be a devotee and you completely changed your life around. Like, what is this? Whatever the case is, whatever role we find ourselves in, we should take that up to the utmost degree that it's possible. It's not that you're going to be perfect at any of these roles. None of us are perfect, and many of us are still trying to grow and get past of a lot of different anarthas and stumbling blocks in our life. But we take it up to whatever degree that we can with sincerity. Sincerity is the main thing. It's not that you're going to be perfect, and oftentimes you may fail, but being sincere in your endeavors and constantly trying to do better and serve out of love, not just out of duty, but out of love. You know, this is Krishna's part and parcel, or I'm serving Krishna, who is my beloved and does everything for me without me even having to ask. You know, do it out of love. And we'll find that sense of purpose, and we'll find that sense of true happiness in our lives, regardless of where we're at. Even if we're still starting off and, you know, maybe we haven't fully started getting to the regulative principles yet. If you're sincere and you're trying to do your best and you're reading, you're chanting, you're trying to really envelop and keep that mood, you'll find happiness, and everything about your life will become purified over time. So I think that's where we'll end today's class. If there's any questions or comments, Kirtaneshwar Prabhu.
Nice class. Good class. You mentioned that we should, try to be in our propensity. We might find ourselves, this wasn't my propensity, but I think that could be a dangerous situation. How do we know our propensity? Because sometimes, we think like Krishna says that it's better to perform one's own duty imperfectly than to perform another's duty perfectly. And you may feel, I can do that better than anybody else, but it's not my role. And so, Guru Maharaj told me once, he said, I said, well, sometimes I listen to this devotee if I want something, instruction on this. And I was kind of speaking freely, and he said, how do you know what's good for you? So I just a thought that, how do we know our propensity? And how do we know what we're actually, what our real propensity is in terms of seva, because we may think, oh, this is my propensity, and then later on we think that something else is my propensity. And so it seems like that could be a dangerous slope if we think like that. And I've heard different devotees speak like that.
Well, that's a good question. There's probably a lot better answer, and honestly, you probably know a better answer. And, I'm not so qualified in a lot of ways, but personally, I would say that oftentimes, naturally, we're going to end up with some type of thing. And if we truly get to know ourselves in a true sense, not just whimsical, this is what's making me feel good, or, this is what I want to do, that sense of a passionate, I'm going to say that feeling of a passion behind it. Not saying that it's necessarily bad in all cases. Sometimes we got a passion for preaching, we're good at it. But when it's done on the passionate level of, all of a sudden I feel like I want to do this, all of a sudden I feel like I want to do that, it's like monkey mind. Oftentimes I think it's better that you try to know yourself well, and also maybe console with someone else. Sometimes people see how you do certain things better than yourself. Sometimes we think ourselves so low that we can't do certain things, but someone higher up knows our propensity, and they see that, and they engage us in that. And even though we think we're not good at it, we do it, and it turns out we're a lot better than we thought. Now, this may not always be the case, and I'm sure you have a better way to go about it. So if you have anything to add to that, please.
I've heard that what you're good at and what you're good at and what you like to do is a good indicator. But then, I'm good at a lot of bad things. I like to do a lot of bad things also, so it might not be the best indicator. But another answer I heard is, our direct authority. And we have our guru, or people have their gurus, but the guru doesn't necessarily know them so well. But if we have a direct authority like the temple president or the temple commander, ashram leader, whoever that direct authority is, they after so many years they begin to really help you discern. That's what one devotee told me, and I feel like I definitely feel that connection with Mother Sundamini in my life. Over the years I've done all the different sevas. Now I kind of have a seva that I do regularly as my seva, but. Yeah, so I think that's good, but I think it's something to be definitely careful about. I'm a Kshatriya, Prabhu. I think I need to go do Kshatriya things, or I have this propensity or that propensity. Sometimes we don't like our position. Arjuna didn't like being a Kshatriya in the battle crew Kshetra. He wasn't happy with it in the beginning, so he may think, I'm not happy with brahmachari life, or I'm not happy with my marriage, I'm not happy in my, but actually that's where the Lord's put you. And so you're going to get whatever comes to you according to your guna and karma. So just thought.
No, that's good. So I think definitely having an authoritative figure be able to help guide you on that if they know you well. And yeah, as I mentioned earlier in the classes, especially if these things come in a divine manner. And, you can't just whimsically think about, oh, this is a divine arrangement. But, you got to be sincere and you got to really know what is this divine plan. Anyways, anyone else before we end the class? Yes,
I just wanted to say that I think in terms of service, it's just important also to just try out different things and see what you like. Because like you said, sometimes you might not realize that you actually are good at something or like something until you try it. So
yeah, I think being open to the service, that's a good thing to go. Because, when we get here, oftentimes some of us start painting and all that. Doesn't mean we're the best at it, but over time living here, we slowly try out different services, and sometimes we keep them, or sometimes we're given a different one. It's good. Yes. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.